This is going to blow your mind. Welcome to Johnny Ringer, where stories of hope and survival rise from the ashes of war. The sun bled orange across the winter sky. It was a cold light. It touched the broken teeth of buildings in the village below. Snow lay like a thin, troubled sheet over the rubble. Twisted metal reached up, like pleading hands frozen in the frost. Smoke, long gone, had stained the remaining walls grey and black. Silence was the loudest sound here. It was a heavy silence, pressed down by the falling night and the memory of explosions. From high above, the village looked like a child's forgotten, broken toy. Each shattered home was a story ended too soon, a life scattered by the winds of war. The air itself felt brittle, ready to crack with the slightest sound. One building stood more skeletal than the others. It was the synagogue. Its roof gaped open to the darkening sky. One wall had crumbled entirely, spilling bricks like fallen teeth onto the snow-dusted ground. A large circular window, once filled with coloured glass, was now a hollow eye staring blankly. Yet somehow a small part of a stone carving, a Star of David, clung stubbornly to a fractured archway. It was a fragile symbol of faith in a place where faith had been terribly wounded. The wind whispered through the empty spaces, carrying tiny snowflakes that danced for a moment before settling on the cold stone floor within. Inside these broken walls, a small boy huddled. His name was Daniel. He was no more than 10 years old, thin and pale. He pressed himself into a shadowed corner behind a fallen pillar. The cold bit at his fingers and toes, even through his worn coat. He shivered, not just from the chill, but from the fear that was his constant companion. He was alone. The vast, ruined space of the synagogue felt both like a shelter and a tomb. He remembered this place full of people, full of song, full of warmth. Now, it was full of ghosts and the biting wind. Clutched tightly in Daniel's arms was an old violin. It was wrapped carefully in a piece of faded linen, like a precious baby. The wood of the violin was dark and smooth beneath the cloth. It had belonged to his father who had a warm smile and strong hands that could make this very instrument sing. His father who had been taken away on a grey morning, leaving only this violin and a hole in Daniel's heart. The violin was more than just wooden strings. It was a promise. It was a memory. It was the last piece of his lost world. Daniel held the wrapped violin to his chest for a long moment. The cold of the stones seeped into him, and the silence of the ruins felt vast and crushing. He thought of his father's words, "Music is hope, Daniel." Even in the dark, he had to make a sound, any sound, to push back the emptiness. Carefully, his small, numb fingers fumbled with the linen. He unwrapped the instrument slowly, reverently. The dark, polished wood seemed to glow faintly in the dim light filtering through the broken walls. He tucked the violin under his chin, the cold wood a familiar shock. He raised the bow, his hand trembled slightly. The first note was soft, hesitant. It was like a question whispered into the frozen air. Then another followed, and another, weaving a fragile melody. It was a lullaby his father used to play for him, a simple tune from a time before the shouting and the fear. The notes were clear and pure, though tinged with an unbearable sadness. He closed his eyes, letting the music guide his fingers. The small sounds seemed to push back the oppressive silence just a little. He played for himself, for his father, for the memories held within the old wood of the instrument. The music, though born of a child's grief, was surprisingly resilient. It crept out from the ruined synagogue. It slipped through the cracks in the broken walls. It floated over the snow-covered rubble, a tiny thread of sound in the vast desolation. The melody was like a delicate bird taking flight in a storm-racked sky. It was almost too small to be noticed, yet it carried a weight of emotion that belied its quietness. The winter air, usually a carrier of harsh sounds like distant gunfire or the crunch of boots, now held something different, something gentle and unexpected. The notes seemed to cling to the frosted air, reluctant to fade. Not far away, an Allied soldier, Sergeant Miller, was making his cautious way through the deserted streets. He was tired. His breath plumed white in the freezing air. His rifle was held ready. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Suddenly, he stopped. He tilted his head, listening. What was that? Music? Here? It couldn't be. He strained his ears. Yes, a violin. It was faint, but unmistakable. A cold knot of suspicion tightened in his stomach. It could be a trap. He motioned to his unseen comrades to hold, then moved silently towards a low, crumbling wall, seeking cover while trying to pinpoint the source of the ethereal sound. Further into the ruined village, a lone figure moved with practiced stealth. Anya was a resistance fighter. Her face was smudged with dirt and etched with weariness, but her eyes were sharp and alert. She knew these broken streets like the back of her hand. Tonight she was checking a hidden cache, her thoughts on supplies, on movements, on the endless grinding struggle. The cold was a familiar enemy, but the silence was usually her ally. She paused, her hand instinctively going to the pistol tucked in her belt. She had heard something that did not belong in this landscape of war. It was music. The notes of the violin reached her, clear and achingly sweet. Anya froze. The sound was so unexpected, so out of place, it was like a flower blooming on a battlefield. It cut through the layers of hardness she had built around her heart. The melody pulled at something deep inside her, a memory she usually kept locked away. It was a simple tune, yet it resonated with a profound sorrow that mirrored her own. She found herself holding her breath, listening intently as the music drifted through the skeletal remains of what was once a vibrant community. The war had taught her to be suspicious of anything unusual, but this felt different. The haunting melody was terribly familiar. It was a lullaby, or something very like it. Her younger brother Samuel, he used to hum a tune just like that, his voice small and off-key, before the soldiers came, before the camps, before he was lost forever. A sudden sharp pain pierced Anya's chest. Tears, hot and unwelcome, pricked at her eyes. She hadn't cried in years. Crying was a luxury she could not afford, but the music, so pure and innocent, bypassed all her defenses. It spoke of lost childhoods, of broken families, of a world that seemed to have forgotten tenderness. Sergeant Miller remained behind his makeshift cover, listening. The music continued, weaving its sad, beautiful pattern in the twilight. This was no soldier's song, no marching tune. It was too gentle for that. It spoke of home, of quiet evenings, of things he thought he had forgotten. It reminded him of the concerts his parents used to take him to, long ago, before the world went mad. He found his grip on his rifle relaxing slightly. The sound wasn't a threat, it was a lament. It was a small, courageous voice in the overwhelming silence of destruction, and it stirred a flicker of warmth in his war-chilled heart. Drawn by the insistent, sorrowful notes, Anya began to move. She moved slowly, cautiously, her senses heightened. Her mission was forgotten for the moment, replaced by an irresistible pull towards the source of the music. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the old synagogue, a place she usually avoided, a place heavy with painful memories for the whole village. She slipped through the shadows, her boots making little sound on the snow. As she neared, she saw a faint, flickering light within the ruins and the small silhouette of someone, a child, holding a violin. Sergeant Miller, too, felt an undeniable urge to investigate. His initial caution warred with a deeper curiosity, a longing for connection in this desolate place. The music was too human, too vulnerable to be a trick. He rose slowly from his hiding place, his weapon now pointed towards the ground. He signaled to his men to stay put, then advanced with careful steps towards the broken synagogue. He saw the collapsed walls, the gaping roof, and then, through a jagged opening, he saw the boy. He was so small, lost in his playing, his eyes closed, his small body swaying gently with the melody. Anya reached the shattered entrance of the synagogue just as Miller approached from another angle. They saw each other at the same instant. For a tense moment they froze. Soldier and resistance fighter, potential enemies. But the music enveloped them, a fragile truce woven in sound. Daniel, sensing their presence, opened his eyes. He saw the two figures standing in the dim light, but he did not stop playing. Instead, his music seemed to grow a little stronger, a little more confident. A few startled pigeons fluttered from the high, broken rafters, their wings whispering. A last, weak ray of the setting sun pierced a shard of remaining stained glass, casting a fleeting jeweled light onto the dusty floor. The final note of the lullaby hung in the cold air. It lingered for a moment, sweet and resonant, before slowly fading into the returning silence. Daniel lowered his bow. His small shoulders drooped slightly, as if the effort had taken all his strength. The silence that followed was different from the silence before. It was not empty. It was filled with an unspoken understanding. Sergeant Miller and Anya looked at the small boy, then at each other. No words were exchanged. None were needed. In their shared gaze there was respect, sorrow, and a fragile, nascent sense of peace. Hope, like the lingering echo of the violin, filled the broken heart of the village. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe to Johnny Ringer for more powerful tales. Hit the bell so you never miss a moment of history brought to life.